This is going to be your guide for using Orbeetle in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So the best way that I can describe Orbeetle is that it's a Pokemon. There's nothing crazy special about it. It does get a Gigantamax, but a problem I have with the Generation 8 Gigantamax Pokemon is that, for the most part, they don't have any new ability or signature moves or special gimmick or anything. The gimmick is in the Gigantamax, and their Gigantamax isn't usually super crazy useful or worth going for over other Gigantamax and Dynamax Pokemon, so we just have Orbeetle. As for abilities, it has kind of alright abilities, nothing great, and it's really just going to come down to Frisk and Telepathy. In doubles, if you're doing a Telepathy needing strat, then Orbeetle is a potential Telepathy candidate, but it's not the best. And then Frisk is going to be your primary one for singles or doubles, because being able to find out your opponent's item is very powerful, and there's a decent amount of Frisk Pokemon out there. Like, let's go and look at, well, not that, let's go and look it up. But the reason why we don't see Frisk on most of these Pokemon is because they have a better ability. So Frisk usually gets sidelined. However, when you have access to it, it's nice to see if that Darmanitan is going to be Choice Band or Choice Scarf. Same thing for the Dracovish, or just finding out the opponent's item tells you a lot about what the opponent wants to do, and you can play around that. So you're trading ability usefulness for the potential to outplay, but Orbeetle doesn't have a lot of outplay built into it. It's hit points and tank, and that's kind of it. So you max out hit points, you go defensive, you set it up however you want, and that's kind of it. However, this is a very tanky Pokemon, especially for something that's supposed to be the bug evolution for the generation. So we just have bulk. However, that's not really like a crazy way of defining the Pokemon if it doesn't do anything special compared to other bulky Pokemon, especially when we have a pre-evolution like Dottler. So the first thing we need to do is compare Orbital's Tankyness to Dottler's Tankyness. If you missed that video, Eviolite Dottler, find that in the description down below. But here we go. So Orbeetle, it takes 71% from a Choice Specs, super effective, max invested Dragapult, but comparing that to the Dottler, Dottler takes less damage. So Eviolite Dottler is tankier than the Orbeetle, which means if we are running Orbeetle as a tank, Dottler is a bit more efficient. Now, the advantage that Orbeetle has is that we can run an item on it, so Citrus Berry gives us more reliability inside of the setup, depending on what we're going for, but then it's going to effectively be the same thing as Dottler. That's like, alright, we Calm Mind, we Iron Defense, we recover, and then we get 4 move slot syndrome. Do we go for the stored power and then nuke everything except for dark type Pokemon? Do we go for the body press? Because Iron Defense, body press, 110 defense Pokemon, that's going to be an insane amount of damage, so we could go for that. Or do we land a bug type move? Struggle Bug is going to be a better option because Orbeetle does have a higher special attack than the Dottler, so just more damage on top of more damage. Now once we hit like +4, 5 on Calm Mind, we just 2-shot everything, and then we're going to be super tanky, so we're just doing more damage than we're receiving. And then it's effectively just going to be, you know, Dottler with Citrus Berry, slightly less tanky, but once you hit like 1 Iron Defense, 2 Calm Minds, it's going to be insignificant. So Dottler's a little better at like getting that set up against slightly more powerful Pokemon, but then once Orbeetle gets going, it gets going harder, it does more damage, and you can also have some different item options. Citrus Berry, leftovers, maybe if there's like you know, the Ghost super effective reducing berry, that can give you a little bit of setup, and then it's just going to be the same things. Like, how do you set up the Orbeetle? Do you run Iron Defense, Recover, Body Press, and then you 4th move slot something else? Now, Orbeetle doesn't want to Trick Room because it has 90 base speed. This is like a surprising amount of speed that just kind of exists there, but also creates some interesting interactions, because now, against other tank Pokemon, you get to set up faster than them. So let's just say we're going up against something like the Korbinite. Korbinite has 67 speed. A lot of tank Pokemon are slow, so we're Iron Defensing before the Korbinite. We're doing all these other things before the opposing Pokemon. However, I brought up Korbinite because Korbinite is just a better Iron Defense Body Press Pokemon, since Orbeetle is still Orbeetle, and it has a ridiculous amounts of weaknesses, much like we saw with the Dottler. So, Bug Psychic, it's a cool unique typing, new to Generation 8, but there's a lot of drawbacks to it, and it doesn't really do much offensively. So that's kind of like why this feels weird to talk about what Orbeetle wants to do, because it completely overlaps with Dottler in singles, and there's just other Pokemon that can do what it wants to do better, even in doubles. Like, I was thinking, alright, what do we do for a doubles Orbeetle set? Because it seems like it has a lot of setup. Like, Psychic type Pokemon bring an insane amount of utility. We have like everything possible right here. We can set up dual screens. We have Trick Room, Wonder Room, Guard Swap, Power Swap, all of these crazy things. Ally Switch, Stored Power. Do we find a way of like getting set up and then do a crazy nuke? We have Skill Swap. We have Trick. We can do whatever we want to the opponent. We have Hypnosis. We have Confuse Ray. But when you try to put it into a moveset on a Pokemon that isn't like super crazy fast, it's just tanky, but it doesn't have a lot of damage, there's just going to be a better Pokemon. Like, okay, here's the thing. Orbeetle's kind of like a loose jack of all trades. Like, it has a lot of potential to do things, but if you try to come up with a moveset, there's just a better Pokemon to do what Orbeetle wants to do in doubles. Like, what about dual screens? Grimmsnarl's better. Even though Orbeetle is tankier than the Grimmsnarl, if I Prankster Light Screen, I'm taking less damage by the time the opponent hits me. If it's Orbeetle, Orbeetle gets outsped, then does Light Screen Reflect. So you're just actually going to have tankier, faster Pokemon setting up dual screens. I mean, like, even Dragapult dual screens is something you'll see, and that Pokemon is going to have more effective tankiness than the Orbeetle, and then can pressure damage or do some kind of other weird setup with, like, Will-O-Wisp and other shenanigans. So if you're trying to do dual screens, Orbeetle isn't good for that. It's too fast for the Trick Room, even though it carries it. It loses the Compound Eyes from Dottler, so it's not really a Hypnosis Pokemon. Even though it has like a lot of really cool tools, it's not going to do anything special in doubles, except for Zatio's crazy strategy. So unfortunately, the secret is out when it comes to this Orbeetle, and I don't know how to feel about that. Because out of all of the times I have been playing Pokemon, not even all the times, you know, the over a decade of competitive Pokemon, the thousands of Fan Friday submissions and uploads we have had, all the battles, this is one of the coolest things I have ever seen for doubles in Pokemon, and Orbeetle just enables it in such a wild way. Also, we need to set things straight right here, right now. It is not Wolf Glick that discovered the eject button switcheroo anti-Dynamax strategy. Zatio came up with it over a week before Wolf Glick claims he came up with it, so stop spreading that false information. We all know that Wolf Glick is washed up right now, couldn't even make it out of Day 1 Worlds for VGC 2019, and he had to use a cheated team back in 2016 to win Worlds. So let's get onto this crazy strategy. Like, here is where the real discovery is. Here is where the real genius of a Zatio's team is. That you skill swap a Prankster Pokemon, and then you have Prankster after you on this beastly tank Pokemon that can recover and also protect outplay, and you have the Wiki Berry. So this Orbeetle just doesn't die and then destroys the opponent's strategy, because Prankster is really common. Orbeetle is like the ultimate anti-Prankster Pokemon and then takes it and runs away with the battle. So what we saw with the Zatio strategy is he puts this next to a Throat Spray Sylveon that then Dynamaxes. So you hit a big Hyper Voice, do a lot of damage, and it's all after you. So we have Prankster effectiveness, like we have +1 priority on the Sylveon, using damaging moves into Dynamax, and just one-shotting everything, which is awesome. And you have to, like, the opponent has to focus the Orbeetle at some point as well, but you can't, because, like, alright, it's either an after you, and then the opponent gets nuked out before it gets a chance to act, or it's a protect outplay, or it's a recover, because this is Prankster Recover. That is incredibly broken as well. And then for the ability, you can make it Frisk, because by that point, it doesn't matter if the opponent knows your items. You use Frisk, you read the opponent's items, you know how to outplay around their strategy, you steal a big part of it in that Prankster, and then you just take off. And that was something really cool. Now, Zatio, he paired this with the anti-Dynamax, so he removes the opponent's Dynamax, and then he has a Sylveon for the Dynamax, just completely run away with the battle, or Darmanitan. So we have, after you, Choice Band, Guerrilla Tactics, Darmanitan. That's a one-shot everything. Same thing with Torkoal. Torkoal comes in with Drought, Charcoal, and then Eruption under that after you. So if the opponent brings any kind of Prankster, they've effectively, unknowingly conceded the battle against this Orbeetle, and this is one of the best strategies I've ever seen. That's why I said I was conflicted about it, because now that it's known, now that the secret is out there, it's going to be annoying to play against. People are going to know what happens when it hits the field, and then bad players are just going to copy paste, because that's a big problem that's been happening with like the last couple of years of Pokemon. Because of rental teams, you can just take someone else's team and just run that team, so you don't have to put any work into building the team yourself, developing your own strategies and stuff. Just take a good player's team and then you run it worse because you're not as good as that player, and you're not understanding anything about Pokemon. So there's also just going to be like a lot of copy pasting on this. Even though I make strategy guides, I leave a lot of it open-ended. I'm like, hey, you can run this like one of 5 different ways, or you can explore the moveset further and find something else to add into it to make it yours. That I don't say you must run this is how you do it. I give a guideline, I give an outline of what you should do, and then open up a lot of potential to make that Pokemon OP for you. That if someone sees a Pokemon, they're like, that thing's trash, and then you discover like a secret overpowered strategy, or you take one of my like, you know, unexpected movesets and you throw it at the opponent, that's going to be incredibly powerful, and that's what I encourage more than anything. But unfortunately with Orbeetle, like I said, it's just a Pokemon. It doesn't really have much. It gets outclassed by almost every other Pokemon in every other way, except for this. And this is like the only way to run it. I guess you could give up the protect outplay potential and then add one of the other many moves onto it, but this is like the crazy gimmick strat. This is the main way you run it. And we're just going to kind of see how it goes. You know, we had like Spin to Swap take off for a little bit. We've had some other like Fan Fridays classics really get adopted, but I feel like this is like one of the most powerful things we've seen. So an adoption rate of this kind of destabilizes the metagame and destabilizes a lot of like creativity and weirdness. So we're just going to have to see what happens with the dangers of this Orbeetle being out in the wild. Because again, like if someone else like takes this in and comes up with a better Pokemon to use next to it, that's also pretty cool. But I don't think you can kind of make this strategy any better than what Azatio has done. Like this was like his just like hard labbing for the early Pokemon Sword and Shield. You know, Sylveon is one of the hardest hitting Pokemon in the game. Same thing with Darmanitan, Torkoal, and then the rest of it just like, even though it's only been like a month since Pokemon Sword and Shield came out, this is already like so well crafted. Just taking years of experience for Pokemon and then giving us this. So I don't know what's going to happen. We can still see some shenanigans. Like, I love the idea of After You on Prankster. That's just so filthy good. And then the last thing to talk about, Gigantamax Orbeetle. If there's a Gigantamax event, then it'll be usable in like competitive or something. Summons Gravity, but even Gigantamax Orbeetle gets outclassed by just another Gravity Pokemon, because you can't use status moves. So what you want to do is set Gravity. Gravity actually increases the accuracy of moves, and it makes Hypnosis have like 99% accuracy. It's like 99.6. I don't know if that rounds up or down, because things start getting weird after that, but that means you have like an almost perfect accurate, if not a perfect accurate Hypnosis, but you can't use it, because you're Dynamaxed. So you need to run this in doubles on like a bulky offensive Orbeetle, but it's only 80 special attack, so it doesn't even do that crazy damage with the modest or anything like that. So it looks like this, and it kind of hurts. And if you're killing Pokemon, then you're not using Gravity to put them asleep or set up any other kind of weirdness. So even like within its own setup, like it's cool that Gravity is getting recognition through a Gigantamax. Maybe someone runs like Gigantamax Orbeetle for fun, and then they learn about Gravity through that. So it's a good teaching tool, but it's not a good competitive use case. And then you can just find better Gravity setting Pokemon into other cool combo setups, and that's going to be it. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank